The Galactic Academy was the pride of the stars, a place where the greatest warriors of hundreds of species were forged. Its halls echoed with the clash of blades, the roar of engines, and the disciplined chants of soldiers preparing for war. Every soldier dreamed of training here. Every empire sent its best. And none of them survived the gravity chamber. It was the final test, a room designed to push every warrior beyond their limits. Its floors shifted beneath crushing gravitational forces that twisted muscles, shattered bones, and crushed even the strongest spirits. No one had ever lasted more than 5 minutes inside. Even the most powerful warriors crawled out gasping, broken, defeated. It was said the chamber was not a test, but a sentence, a reminder that there was always a force stronger than them. Until she walked in. Her name was Lena Carter, the only human at the academy. When she first arrived, no one noticed her. Humans were a minor species in the grand scale of the galaxy. They were not known for strength or speed. They were frail, soft-skinned creatures, good for science and trade, but laughable in combat. The other cadets sneered when they saw her. Some laughed out loud. "She won't last a week," said a towering Karen soldier. "She's half our size and weaker than a cub." "She'll be begging to go home before the first trial," hissed a reptilian Sith warrior. Lena heard every word. She said nothing. The truth was, she was weak, at least by their standards. Her arms were thinner, her reflexes slower, and her bones far more fragile. The first few weeks were hell. Every day she was beaten in combat drills. Every run she was the last to finish. Every weapon she lifted felt heavier than her own body. But what the others didn't see was the fire burning inside her. The same fire that had carried humanity through extinction, war, and despair for centuries. When others laughed, Lena trained. When they rested, she pushed harder. And when they mocked her for failing, she swore silently that she would rise. The first time she entered the gravity chamber, the weight crushed her instantly. It was like being pinned under a mountain. Her bones screamed. Her breath was stolen from her chest. Every step felt like walking through liquid iron. After only 30 seconds, she collapsed, unable to move. The instructors pulled her out. The other cadets laughed until their sides ached. "Pathetic," one muttered. "She's not a warrior, she's a child," another sneered. Lena didn't respond. She limped back to her quarters, her muscles trembling, her lungs burning. She stared at herself in the mirror, sweat-soaked, bruised, and barely able to stand. "They're right," she thought. "I'm weak. I don't belong here." But another voice whispered in her mind, a voice she remembered from her grandmother, a veteran of Earth's last wars. "Humans don't win because they're strong, Lena. They win because they refuse to stop." The next morning, before dawn, she returned to the chamber. It was empty. The other cadets were still asleep. She activated the sequence and stepped inside once more. The crushing weight slammed into her body, but she gritted her teeth and forced herself forward. One step, then another's, then another's. She fell after a minute this time, but it was enough. The next day, she lasted 1 minute and 10 seconds. A week later, 2 minutes. A month later, 3. Her body broke and rebuilt itself over and over. Muscles tore and grew stronger. Bones hardened. Her breath grew deeper, steadier. Her heart, the heart of a human, beat harder with each trial. Pain became her teacher. Failure became her fuel. By the 3rd month, whispers spread through the academy. "Have you heard? The human is still training in the gravity chamber." "Impossible. She should be dead by now." "They say she's lasted 4 minutes. No one ever gone past 5. The laughter stopped. The mockery turned into curiosity, and then, slowly, into respect. They watched her enter the chamber every morning before dawn and stay until her legs gave out. They saw her crawl out bruised and bloodied, only to return again the next day. Even the instructors, hardened veterans of countless wars, began to watch her with quiet admiration. On the 100th day of training, the academy gathered outside the gravity chamber. Every cadet, every instructor, every commander was there. They wanted to see how far the human would go. Lena stood before the door, her uniform drenched in sweat, her face marked with scars of months of battle against the chamber. She looked at the crowd, the same faces that had once laughed at her, and she smiled faintly. "Today," she whispered to herself, "I don't crawl." The doors opened, the weight slammed down, but this time Lena did not fall. She stepped forward, slow but steady. The pressure increased, her muscles screamed, her bones groaned, but she did not stop. 1 minute. 3 minutes. 5 minutes. The timer passed the record. A murmur swept through the crowd. Then 6 minutes, 7, 8. At 9 minutes and 30 seconds, she finally fell to her knees. The chamber hissed and shut down, releasing its crushing force. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, one by one, the warriors who had once mocked her rose to their feet and saluted. From that day forward, the gravity chamber was no longer a place of fear. It was known as Lena Carter's training room. And every cadet, no matter how strong or proud, stepped into it knowing one unshakable truth. The strongest warrior in the galaxy wasn't the one born with power. It was the one who refused to give up. The day Lena Carter broke the gravity chamber record, the Academy changed forever. For decades, that room had been a symbol of limits, a reminder that even the strongest warrior had a point where their body and spirit would break. But now, the legend had been rewritten. A human, a species considered weak and unfit for war, had turned that chamber into her training ground. At first, many believed it was a fluke, that she had survived by luck or that the machine had malfunctioned. But when Lena returned the very next morning and trained again, and again the day after that, the whispers began to spread beyond the academy walls. They say the human trains under the chamber every sunrise. They say she lasts longer every time. Some say she smiles under the pressure. Soon her name was known across the galaxy's military circles. Admirals requested reports. Generals sent observers. Even the Council of War, the highest authority of the Galactic Alliance, asked for details on the human anomaly. For Lena, none of that mattered. Fame, recognition, praise, they were distant echoes. All she cared about was more strength, more endurance, more control. Every day she stepped into the chamber, she remembered how far she had come. From a girl who collapsed in 30 seconds to a warrior who lasted nearly 10 minutes under impossible gravity. But even now, she knew it wasn't enough. The galaxy was vast and cruel. There were enemies out there who could destroy worlds with a gesture. If she was going to stand among the strongest, she couldn't stop here. So she pushed harder. But strength always comes with pain. And the deeper Lena went into her training, the more her body paid the price. Some mornings she woke up unable to move her legs. Other days her arms felt like they were made of stone. Her muscles tore faster than they could heal. Blood vessels burst under the relentless pressure. And yet she returned. "You're killing yourself," Commander Arvin, her instructor, warned her one evening as she limped out of the chamber, soaked in sweat and blood. "No one, not even the strongest Karen warrior, trains like this without breaking." Lena looked up at him, her voice hoarse but steady. "Then I'll break, and I'll build myself again." Arvin stared at her for a long time. There was no arrogance in her words, no defiance, just pure, unshakable resolve. He sighed and shook his head. "Humans," he muttered. "You're either the weakest beings in the galaxy or the most dangerous." The Academy wasn't ready for what came next. As weeks turned into months, Lena's growth became undeniable. Her speed improved. Her reaction time sharpened. Her strength surpassed that of cadets twice her size. The same warriors who had mocked her now avoided sparring with her. They didn't admit it aloud, but many of them feared her not for what she was now, but for what she was becoming. One afternoon, during a combat simulation, Lena faced Rorak, a 6-armed, 3-meter-tall war champion from the planet Gorthan. He was undefeated. His species was bred for battle, their bodies living weapons. When he saw that his opponent was the human, he laughed so hard his massive shoulders shook. "This is an insult," Rorak boomed. "I will end this in one strike." The match began. Rorak charged forward, his fists like meteors, but Lena didn't dodge. She stepped forward straight into his attack. The ground trembled under the impact, but she didn't fall. Instead, she caught his fist midair. For a moment, the entire arena fell silent. Then she twisted, and Rorak crashed to the ground with a thunderous roar. The match was over in 10 seconds. No one laughed after that. But power attracts attention, and attention brings enemies. Word of the human who broke the chamber reached beyond the academy into the ears of rival empires and warrior clans. Some saw her as a threat. Others saw her as a weapon. A few even saw her as a challenge they could not ignore. Late one night, as Lena finished another grueling session in the chamber, she found a message waiting on her bunk. It was unsigned, but the words sent a chill through her veins. "If you are truly strong, meet me in the crucible. Only one of us will leave standing." The Crucible, a forbidden dueling ground deep beneath the academy. Officially, it didn't exist. Unofficially, it was where warriors tested themselves without rules, without limits. Many entered, few walked out. The next day, Lena showed the message to Commander Arvin. His face darkened as he read it. "You don't have to do this," he said. "Whoever sent this, they're not a cadet, they're something else." "I know," Lena replied. "Then why go?" She looked past him toward the towering doors of the gravity chamber. "Because I didn't come here to be good. I came here to be unstoppable." Arvin stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Then may whatever gods exist watch over them, because they're going to need it." That night beneath the academy, in the cold silence of the Crucible, Lena stood alone. Across from her, a figure emerged from the shadows, massive, armored, and radiating power that made the air hum. It was not a student. It was not even a soldier. It was a veteran, a warrior whose name was spoken with fear even among warlords. And yet when his eyes fell upon Lena, he smiled. "So you're the human," he growled, "the one who tamed the gravity chamber." Lena's heart pounded, but her voice was calm. "I didn't tame it," she said. "I learned from it." The warrior chuckled darkly. "Then let's see what your lessons are worth." The lights dimmed, the doors sealed shut, and as the first blow echoed through the arena, Lena realized this was no longer about training. This was war. The Crucible was not just a place. It was a legend. No rules, no limits, no mercy. Fights here ended only when one warrior could no longer stand. Blood had stained its metal floors for centuries. It was where the greatest fighters proved their worth, and tonight it was where Lena Carter would face her greatest test yet. The crowd gathered silently in the shadows around the arena. They weren't cadets this time. They were soldiers, veterans, mercenaries, killers. They had come not for entertainment, but to witness something rare, a human challenging a monster. Across the arena, her opponent stepped forward. His name was Carol, a warrior of the Zathrian clans, forged in battlefields that broke empires. His body was a wall of muscle, his armor heavy as stone, his eyes glowing with battle fury. It was said Carol had crushed tanks with his bare hands. No one had ever lasted more than a minute against him in the Crucible. And yet Lena didn't flinch. "You don't belong here," Carol growled, his voice echoing off the steel walls. "This place is for warriors. You are a child." Lena's breathing was steady, her heart pounding like a war drum. "Maybe," she said, "but a child can grow." The fight began with a roar. Carol moved faster than anyone his size had a right to. His first strike was a hammer-like punch aimed at Lena's chest. The impact threw her backward, smashing her into the wall. Pain exploded through her body, something cracked in her ribs. The crowd gasped. "It's over," someone muttered. "She won't get up." But Lena pushed herself to her feet. Blood dripped from her lip, her breathing was ragged, still she raised her fists. Carol grinned, showing razor-sharp teeth. "Good, it's more fun when they fight back." He charged again, a blur of brute force. Lena ducked under his swing, rolling to the side. His second strike missed her by inches. The third grazed her shoulder, sending sparks of agony down her arm. But she didn't fall this time. She had studied fighters like him. Raw power, no patience, always expecting their strength to crush their opponents before they had a chance to think. She wouldn't outmatch him with strength, but she didn't have to. She just had to endure. Minutes dragged like hours. Carol struck again and again, each blow strong enough to shatter stone. Lena dodged when she could, blocked when she had no choice. Every impact left her weaker. Every breath hurt. But deep inside, she clung to the lesson the gravity chamber had taught her. Pain is not the enemy, it is the forge. "You're slowing down," she whispered through bloodied lips. Carol snarled and swung with both arms, a devastating double strike. Lena sidestepped and slammed her elbow into his ribs. It was like hitting a wall, but he staggered just slightly. For the first time, the giant looked surprised. The crowd murmured, "She hit him. She hurt him." Carol's eyes burned with rage. "Enough!" he roared. His fists came faster now, wild, furious. Lena ducked and weaved, but one blow caught her leg and she collapsed to one knee. The Zathrian seized the chance, grabbing her by the throat and lifting her into the air. "Pathetic," he hissed. "This is the strength of humans." Lena's vision blurred. Her lungs screamed for air. She felt her consciousness slipping. And then she remembered. The days she spent crawling under crushing gravity. The nights she cried from pain, but returned at dawn. The laughs, the mockery, The names they called her weak, soft, useless. And she remembered why she was here. Not to win, not to prove them wrong, but to become something no one expected, something unstoppable. A spark lit in her chest. A scream rose from deep within her. With a burst of strength she didn't know she had, Lena slammed her knee into Carol's arm. Once, twice. Bones cracked. His grip faltered. She dropped to the ground, gasping, and drove her fist into his knee. The massive warrior roared as he stumbled back. The crowd erupted, not in laughter, not in pity, but in awe. Lena stood, bloodied and shaking, but with fire in her eyes. "Humans don't stop," she said, voice trembling but fierce. "Not ever." Carol charged again, roaring like a beast. But now his movements were sloppy. His rage clouded his judgment. Lena sidestepped, dodged, ducked. She was faster, sharper. Every miss drained his strength. Every second she grew stronger. When the moment came, she seized it. Carol swung with everything he had. Lena ducked under his arm, stepped in close, and slammed her fist into a pressure point at his side. The one weak spot she'd studied from his species, anatomy. He froze, gasping in shock. Then she leaped, spinning midair, and drove her heel into his jaw with every ounce of strength left in her body. The giant crashed to the floor. Silence. The kind of silence that only comes when something impossible has happened. Carol groaned, trying to rise. His body refused. He was beaten not by a stronger foe, but by one who refused to break. Lena swayed, her vision fading, every muscle screaming in agony, but she stood tall, bloodied, and defiant. The human, the weak, fragile human, was still on her feet. The crowd, hardened warriors all, rose to their feet and saluted her. No words, just silent respect. Commander Arvin stepped from the shadows, pride in his eyes. "Do you know what you've done?" he asked quietly. Lena blinked through the blood and sweat. "I survived." "You did more than that," Arvin said. "You showed them what strength truly is." That night, the legend of the gravity chamber girl grew into something bigger. She was no longer just a curiosity or a story whispered in the halls. She was Lena Carter, the human who entered the crucible and made a monster fall. And far beyond the academy, in distant war rooms and secret chambers, powerful eyes turned their gaze toward her. Some with admiration, some with fear. Because they all knew the same truth now. If a human could defeat Carol, there was nothing she couldn't do next. The name Lena Carter was no longer just a name. It was a message, whispered in military halls, muttered by warriors, studied by tacticians. The girl who once struggled to stand under the weight of the gravity chamber had defeated Carol, the Zathrian war beast, in the crucible. And in doing so, she had shattered more than a legend. She had shattered expectations. But victories have consequences, and hers were beginning to spread across the galaxy like ripples in still water. For centuries, the most powerful empires had laughed at humans. They were traders, diplomats, builders, never warriors. But now, leaders watched Lena's recordings in silence. Admirals replayed her fights over and over, analyzing every move. Governments that once ignored Earth now spoke its name with caution. And in the dark corners of space, where wars were planned and empires were built, others whispered something far more dangerous. If one human can do this, what happens when there are thousands? At the academy, Lena's life changed completely. She could no longer walk through the halls unnoticed. Cadets who once mocked her now saluted as she passed. Warriors asked for sparring sessions, hopping to learn from her. Some admired her, others envied her. And a few hated her because every step she took forward made them question their own strength. But none of it mattered to Lena. Fame meant nothing. What mattered was the same thing it always had, becoming stronger. Her training intensified. If the gravity chamber had once been her enemy, it was now her greatest ally. She no longer measured herself in minutes, but in hours. She trained until her muscles screamed, until her breath came in ragged gasps, until she collapsed, and then she trained again. "You don't know when to stop," Commander Arvin told her one evening as she staggered out of the chamber, barely conscious. Lena smiled weakly. "Stopping is what they want me to do." "Oh, they?" She looked up at him, eyes burning with quiet determination. Everyone who ever said humans were weak. One night, as a cold rain fell across the academy's silver spires, a visitor arrived, one no one expected. He was tall, cloaked in crimson, with eyes like molten metal. His name was General Thaler, a strategist from the Zareth Dominion, a civilization feared across 1,000 systems. He had never stepped foot on the academy grounds before. And yet that night, he asked for only one person. "Bring me the human," he said. Lena was summoned to the strategy chamber, where the general stood before a star map glittering with countless worlds. He studied her for a long time, silent, calculating. "So it's true," he said finally. "You are the one who tamed the chamber and defeated Carol." "I didn't tame anything," Lena replied. "I just learned to endure." Thaler's lips curved slightly. "Endurance is power, girl. It is rarer and more dangerous than brute strength." He walked closer, hands clasped behind his back. "Do you know why I'm here?" Lena shook her head. "Because power like yours doesn't go unnoticed. There are those who see you as a threat and those who see you as an opportunity." He paused. "I am both." Lena stayed silent. The general circled her slowly, like a predator measuring its prey. "You are about to face something far greater than Carol," he said. "There are warriors being trained right now, assassins, killers, weapons forged for a single purpose, to break you before you become unstoppable." "Let them try," Lena said calmly. Thaler's gaze hardened. "They will not try, they will succeed if you don't grow stronger still. The question, Lena Carter, is not whether you can fight, it is whether you can survive what's coming." The weeks that followed were unlike anything Lena had experienced. Her training moved beyond the gravity chamber. Now she was thrown into war simulations designed to break even veteran soldiers. She fought in zero-gravity battles, learned to survive in oxygen-depleted environments, trained with alien weapons that nearly tore her muscles apart. Each challenge pushed her to the edge. Each one taught her something new, not just about combat, but about herself. She failed often, and every failure hurt, but she didn't stop. "You're evolving faster than any cadet I've ever seen," Commander Arvin admitted during one brutal session. "But this path you're on, it's lonely. Are you ready for that?" Lena wiped sweat from her brow. "I've been alone since the day I walked into the chamber." Then came the night that changed everything. The academy alarms screamed to life. Emergency lights bathed the halls in red. Soldiers ran through the corridors, shouting orders. Something or someone had breached the perimeter. Lena was pulled from training and rushed to the observation deck. Through the reinforced glass, she saw them, a fleet of black, angular ships descending silently toward the planet. They bore no insignia, no markings, only the dark signature of an elite strike force. "Who are they?" she asked. Commander Arvin's expression was grim. "They're not supposed to exist. They're called the Veil Assassins from the outer systems. They're ghosts, and they're here for you." "For me," Lena's chest tightened. Arvin nodded. "You're not just a cadet anymore, you're a symbol, and symbols are dangerous." The Academy's defenses roared to life, but it was too late. The first wave hit the ground, silent figures in advanced armor, moving like shadows. They didn't fire at buildings. They didn't target systems. They came straight for the training sector, straight for her. Lena stood in the hangar, heart pounding as explosions lit the night sky. Dozens of soldiers sprinted toward her position. She could see the cold precision in their movements. These weren't warriors looking for glory. They were here to end her story before it truly began. Commander Arvin handed her a weapon, a slim black pulse rifle. "This isn't a simulation anymore," he said. Lena took the rifle. Her hands were steady, her breath was calm. "I know," she whispered. "This is just another chamber." And with that, she stepped forward, toward the storm that waited for her. The alarm screamed louder than thunder as the night sky above the academy burned red with explosions. The Veil had come, a ghost army trained for one mission, to erase Lena Carter from existence before she became a threat too great to control. Their ships cut through the atmosphere like blades, dropping wave after wave of silent killers onto the surface. And at the center of their hunt stood Lena. She could feel the ground tremble beneath her boots as the first detonations shook the training sector. Fire licked the distant sky, and the Academy's defense cannons roared to life, lighting the horizon with streaks of plasma. Yet the assassins kept coming, fast, coordinated, unstoppable. "Cadet Carter," Commander Arvin's voice crackled through her comms. "Get to the evacuation tunnels, now." "No," Lena replied calmly, loading the pulse rifle he had given her. "If they came for me, they're going to find me waiting." There was no fear in her voice, only cold, steady resolve. She had trained for years to endure, to survive, to grow stronger. All of it had led to this moment. This was no longer a simulation. It was life and death. and she had no intention of dying. The first squad appeared through the smoke, black armor, red visors, moving with lethal precision. They saw her instantly and opened fire. Blue plasma bolts tore through the air, scorching the walls around her. Lena dove for cover, rolling behind a collapsed support beam. Her heart pounded, but her breathing remained steady. She had been under worse pressure before, gravity that crushed her bones, pain that screamed through her muscles. This was just another kind of pressure. She popped out from cover and returned fire. Her shots were precise, controlled. One assassin dropped, then another. But there were too many. They advanced quickly, flanking her from both sides. "Fall back," shouted Arvin through the comm. "You're outnumbered." "I'm not falling back," Lena whispered. "I don't run." The battle raged across the training sector. The assassins moved like shadows, climbing walls, dropping from above, weaving through the wreckage. Lena adapted just as she always had. She ducked under blows, disarmed enemies, and turned their own weapons against them. Each kill came with pain, a burn on her arm, a cut across her leg, a bruise forming on her ribs, but she pushed forward. Pain was not her enemy, it was her ally. Still, for every assassin she dropped, 3 more took their place. They were relentless, and slowly they began to close the circle around her. "This isn't a battle," she muttered, reloading. "It's a hunt." And she was the prey. Minutes felt like hours. Her muscles burned, her lungs screamed, and blood dripped from a wound on her shoulder. But Lena refused to stop. She remembered the gravity chamber, the crushing force that had once broken her again and again. She remembered collapsing, crying, crawling back to her feet. And she remembered her promise, "I will not break." One assassin lunged from the shadows, blades slicing through the air. Lena twisted aside and slammed the butt of her rifle into his helmet, cracking the visor. Another came from behind. She grabbed his arm and flipped him over her shoulder, sending him crashing into the floor. A third tried to shoot. She ducked under the bolt and fired point-blank into his chest. But then a blast hit her square in the back. The force threw her forward, slamming her into the wall. Pain shot through every nerve. Her weapon clattered to the floor. For a moment the world blurred. Her knees trembled. "End it," one of the assassins hissed, raising his rifle. But Lena wasn't done yet. She reached deeper than she ever had before and pushed herself off the ground. With a roar that echoed through the chamber, she charged forward, tackling the assassin to the floor. The rifle went off, the blast missing her head by inches. She grabbed a fallen blade and drove it into his chest. "Not today," she hissed. But her strength was fatting. There were too many, they were too fast, and she was only one. Then through the smoke and chaos, Commander Arvin's voice cut through her calm. "Hold the line, Carter. Reinforcements inbound. You're not alone." Not alone. The words lit something inside her. A fire, a memory. She had always been alone in the chamber. Alone in her training. Alone in her pain. But this fight was bigger than her. It wasn't just about surviving. It was about proving that humanity's spirit couldn't be snuffed out by fear or numbers. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for all of them. Moments later, the Academy soldiers arrived. Dozens of armored troops stormed the battlefield, weapons blazing. Plasma bolts lit up the night. The assassins turned to face the new threat, but the tide had shifted. For the first time, they were outmatched. "Carter," Arvin shouted as he ran toward her position. "Are you alive?" "Still standing," she coughed, blood on her lips. "Good, because this isn't over." Together, they pushed forward, cutting through the remaining assassins with brutal precision. Lena fought like a storm, fast, focused, relentless. Her movements weren't graceful, but they were unstoppable. Every strike carried the weight of her training. Every shot echoed her will to live. When the last assassin fell, the battlefield was silent. The Academy was in ruins. Fires burned across the sector. Smoke rose into the night sky. But Lena Carter still stood. Her body was bruised, battered, and bleeding, but her spirit was unbroken. Commander Arvin approached her slowly. "You just survived a direct assassination attempt by one of the most feared organizations in the galaxy," he said. "Do you understand what that means?" Lena wiped blood from her face and stared out at the burning horizon. "It means they're scared." "Of you." She shook her head. "Of what comes next." Arvin nodded. "And what does come next?" Lena turned to him, eyes blazing with determination. "They came here to end me, but now they know they can't. So I'm going to find them and show them that humans don't wait to be hunted." The Night of Shadows had changed everything. Lena wasn't just a student anymore. She wasn't just a fighter or a survivor. She was a force, a storm, and every empire, every enemy, and every assassin now knew it. And far away, in the darkness of deep space, the leaders of the Veil watched the footage of the failed mission in silence. "She lived," one of them said. "No," replied another. "She endured, and that's worse." The night of the attack changed everything. The academy had been scarred, its walls burned, and its defenses shaken, but it still stood. And at its heart, Lena Carter stood too, bloodied but unbroken. The assassins had failed, the Veil had failed. But their failure wasn't the end, it was the beginning. For Lena, the attack was a message, a declaration of war. They had come to destroy her before she became something unstoppable. Instead, they had forged her into exactly that. The days after the battle were quiet but heavy. The academy rebuilt. The cadets returned to training, yet an unease lingered in the halls. Everyone knew the Veil would try again. They always did. And next time, they might not stop at one person. Lena spent those days in the gravity chamber again, pushing harder, longer, deeper. The crushing pressure that had once broken her was now a familiar weight. It felt like an old friend reminding her of who she was. Commander Arvin watched her silently from the control room. "You don't rest," he said through the comm. "Most people would celebrate surviving an assassination attempt. You're in here breaking yourself again." "I'm not most people," Lena replied, her voice strained under the weight. "And this isn't about surviving anymore, it's about ending it." One evening, a message came. It wasn't from the Academy or the Alliance. It wasn't even encrypted. It was a single line broadcast across unsecured channels, a challenge. "Come find us, human, if you dare." Attached to the message was a set of coordinates, deep in the outer rim, far beyond Alliance patrol routes. A place known as the Black Spire, an asteroid base that existed outside the law beyond politics. A place where assassins were made and where governments turned a blind eye. It was a trap, everyone knew it. And Lena was going anyway. "Are you insane?" Commander Arvin demanded when she showed him the message. "They want you to come, it's suicide." "Maybe," Lena said, "but I'm tired of waiting for them to strike first." "You're one person, they're an army." "I was one person against gravity, against Carol, against the Veil, and I'm still here." Arvin stared at her for a long moment, then he sighed. "I can't stop you, can I?" "No," Lena said softly, "because this isn't just my fight anymore. If they're not stopped, they'll come for others, and next time those people might not be ready." A week later, under the cold light of distant stars, a small black dropship cut through the void. Inside, Lena sat alone, dressed not as a cadet but as a soldier. Her pulse rifle rested across her knees. Her breath was calm, her heartbeat steady. The journey was long and silent. As she neared the Black Spire, memories surfaced, the mocking laughter when she first arrived at the academy, the crushing weight of the chamber, the roar of Carol in the crucible, the fire and blood of the assassination attempt. Every scar, every failure, every victory had led to this. When the dropship emerged from hyperspace, the base loomed before her, a sprawling fortress built into the bones of a massive asteroid. Ships patrolled its perimeter like hungry predators. It was heavily fortified, impenetrable to most. But Lena wasn't most. The infiltration began at dawn. Moving like a shadow, Lena slipped through sensor grids and scaled jagged rock faces. She studied patrol routes, evaded searchlights, and hacked security gates. Years of training had sharpened her into something more than a soldier. She was patient, precise, relentless. Finally, she reached the inner complex, the heart of the Veil. From the shadows, she watched them, hundreds of assassins training in brutal, unforgiving drills. They were fast, deadly, merciless, and every single one of them had been sent to kill her. Her chest tightened. It was overwhelming, impossible. But then she heard her grandmother's voice again, the one she had carried since childhood. "Humans don't win because they're strong. They win because they refuse to stop." She stepped into the light. The first guard saw her and shouted. Sirens wailed, alarms screamed, dozens of assassins rushed toward her. Lena raised her weapon and fired. The battle was chaos. Plasma bolts lit up the corridors, blades clashed in brutal melee, smoke and fire filled the air. But Lena moved like a storm, never still, never hesitant. Every step she took was a lesson she had learned. Every strike was powered by every failure she had endured. She fought with the patience of someone who had been broken and rebuilt 1,000 times. She fought with the fury of someone who had been hunted and refused to run. And she fought with the strength of humanity, stubborn, defiant, unyielding. One by one, the assassins fell. Deeper into the base, she found the command chamber, and there waiting for her was a familiar figure. The leader of the Veil, cloaked in obsidian armor, his face hidden beneath a dark mask. "So," he said, his voice calm and cold, "the little human has come to die." "No," Lena replied, "I've come to finish what you started." He laughed, stepping forward. "You are strong, stronger than most I've faced, but you are still just one, and we are many." "Maybe," she said, leveling her weapon, "but I only need to beat you." The duel was unlike anything she had faced before. The leader moved with deadly precision, faster and stronger than Carol, more cunning than any assassin. His strikes were impossible to predict, his counters flawless. Twice he knocked the weapon from her hand. 3 times he nearly ended her life. But each time she got back up. The chamber echoed with the clash of steel and the roar of plasma. Sparks rained like stars as blade met blade. Blood ran down Lena's arm. Her breaths came heavy and ragged, but she never stopped. At last, with a final surge of strength, Lena caught his blade mid-swing, twisted it free, and drove her knee into his chest. As he stumbled, she slammed the hilt of the weapon against his mask, shattering it. The leader fell to his knees, gasping. "You," he hissed, blood on his lips. "What are you?" Lena stared down at him, her eyes blazing. "Human." And then she struck. The leader fell, the base's alarms wailed in panic. The Veil's command was broken. The hunters had become the hunted. As she stood amidst the wreckage, bruised and exhausted but victorious, Lena Carter knew this was not the end. The galaxy was vast and enemies would always rise, but so would she. She had walked into the heart of darkness and torn it apart, not with strength, but with will. And as she looked out into the endless stars, one thought echoed in her mind. This is what they feared all along. The battle was over. The Black Spire, once the heart of the galaxy's most feared assassin network, burned quietly beneath a blanket of stars. Its walls, once symbols of fear and control, now lay shattered. Its soldiers, once predators, now lay scattered or surrendered. And at the center of it all stood Lena Carter. Her armor was scorched, her body bruised, and her hands still shook from the final fight. But she was alive. She had done the impossible, not once, not twice, but again and again. From the gravity chamber to the crucible, from the academy to the heart of the Veil, she had walked through every hell they built to break her, and she was still standing. The silence around her felt almost sacred. It wasn't victory she felt, not really. It was something deeper, something heavier. It was peace. For the first time in years, there was no enemy in front of her. No challenge pressing down, no voice telling her she was too weak. Just silence, just the stars, just the slow, steady beat of her own heart. A transmission crackled to life in her ear. "Carter, this is Commander Arvin. Are you alive?" "Still breathing," she replied with a tired smile. "It's done." On the other end, Arvin's voice carried something it rarely did, pride. "You changed the course of this galaxy tonight." "Maybe," Lena said softly, "or maybe I just changed myself." News of the fall of the Veil spread faster than light. Across the galaxy, governments that once feared the assassins now stood taller. Worlds that once lived in terror finally felt safe, and everywhere the name Lena Carter was spoken with awe. The girl who once struggled to stand under crushing gravity had brought down one of the galaxy's greatest threats. The student who was mocked and underestimated had become a living legend. But to Lena, none of that was why she fought. She hadn't trained in the chamber for fame. She hadn't challenged Carol to be remembered. She hadn't stormed the Black Spire to become a hero. She had done it because she believed, truly believed, that strength wasn't about power. It was about choice, about refusing to stop when the universe tells you to kneel, about standing again and again even when no one believes you can. Weeks later, Lena returned to the Galactic Academy. The halls were different now. Where once there had been laughter and mockery, there was respect and something deeper, hope. Cadets of every species trained harder. They pushed themselves beyond their limits. They stayed longer in the gravity chamber than ever before. Because now they believed they could. Some even called it the Carter effect, the wave of determination that swept through the academy after her victories. It wasn't about copying her moves or following her techniques. It was about embracing the one truth she had lived by. Limits are meant to be broken. One morning, Lena walked into the gravity chamber again. It felt strange, stepping into the room that had once been her greatest enemy. The weight crashed down on her as always, but this time it felt different, familiar, almost comforting. She stood there for a long moment, letting the crushing force press against her body, letting the memories of her journey wash over her. This was where it all started, where she had fallen again and again, where she had learned that strength wasn't born, it was built. It was carved into the soul by every bruise, every scar, every failure. And as she stood there, she smiled. "This room didn't break me," she whispered. "It made me." Her return to the chamber didn't go unnoticed. Young cadets gathered outside the observation window, watching in silence as she trained. Many of them were new recruits species that had never considered a career in combat before. Among them were humans too, inspired by the story of the girl who had turned weakness into a weapon. "Do you think she'll ever stop?" one cadet asked. "No," another replied, "and that's why no one will ever surpass her." But Lena didn't train to be surpassed or remembered. She trained because the universe was vast, and there would always be new challenges, new enemies, new darkness. And when they came, she wanted to be ready. Months later, the Galactic Council invited her to stand before them, not as a soldier, but as a representative of something far greater. They asked her to speak not about battles or strategy, but about strength. Standing on the podium before leaders from hundreds of worlds, Lena felt a weight heavier than any gravity chamber pressing down on her. But she spoke anyway, simply, honestly, from the heart. "I was told once that humans were too weak for war," she began. "That we were too fragile, too slow, too soft, and for a long time they were right. But strength isn't about what you're born with, it's about what you choose to become." She paused, letting the silence settle. "I was not the strongest, I was not the fastest, but I refused to stop. And that is something every species, every person can do. If you fall, rise. If you fail, try again. And if the universe tells you that you are small, show it how big your spirit can be." The chamber erupted in thunderous applause. And in that moment, Lena Carter was no longer just a soldier. She was a symbol of hope, of resilience, of the unbreakable will of a single human soul. Years passed, new warriors rose, new threats emerged, and yet the legend of Lena Carter endured. Some said she retired to train the next generation. Others believed she ventured beyond known space, seeking new challenges where no one had dared to go. But in the halls of the academy, the gravity chamber still stood, unchanged, unyielding. And every cadet who stepped inside felt the same crushing weight that once pressed on Lena. Some fell, most failed. But a few smiled, whispered her name, and took another step forward. Because they knew, just as Lena had, that strength wasn't measured by victory. It was measured by how many times you got back up. And so the legend lived on, not in monuments or songs, but in every warrior who refused to break, in every soldier who fought one more day, and in every human who believed they could rise beyond what the universe expected. The gravity chamber still broke many. But for those who truly understood, it was never a place of defeat. It was a place where greatness was born,